Apple is reportedly planning something with the iPhone 18 Pro Max that could fundamentally change how you think about smartphone cameras. For the first time ever on an iPhone, supply chain reports confirm that a variable aperture camera system has entered active production. And if you're currently holding an iPhone 15 Pro Max or older, this single upgrade alone could justify your entire purchase. But the camera is not the only reason this phone is generating so much attention right now. The A20 Pro chip is moving to a 2-nanometer process. The dynamic island is shrinking by roughly 35%. The battery could push past 5,100 milliamp hours. And here is the part that changes the buying math entirely. Analysts are predicting that Apple will keep the starting price flat at $1,199. That is the same price as the current iPhone 17 Pro Max despite significant hardware upgrades under the hood. Let that sink in for a second. A brand new 2-nanometer chip. A camera system that costs Apple 50% more to manufacture. A bigger battery. And potentially the same starting price. If that holds true, this could be the best value flagship Apple has released in years. But before you make any decisions, there are a few critical details most buyers are completely missing right now. Let's start with the chip, because this is where the real story begins. The A20 Pro will be the first iPhone processor built on TSMC's 2-nanometer process. That is a full generation jump from the 3-nanometer A19 Pro. According to supply chain data, this transition could deliver up to 15% faster CPU performance while using roughly 25 to 30% less power doing the same tasks. In plain English, that means apps launch faster, games run smoother, and your phone stays cooler while doing all of it. But here's where things get very interesting. This is not just a speed bump. The A20 Pro is using an entirely new transistor architecture called Gate-All-Around. Instead of the FinFET design Apple has used for years, this new approach wraps the gate around the transistor from all four sides. That virtually eliminates power leakage. For you, that means real-world battery gains you will actually feel throughout your day, not just numbers on a spec sheet. The chip also uses a new packaging method called WMCM, wafer-level multi-chip module. Instead of cramming everything onto one die, the CPU, GPU, and neural engine sit on separate dies inside the same package. That improves thermal management and lets each component draw only the power it needs at any given moment. If you game for 2 hours straight or edit 4K video on the go, this chip should maintain peak performance far longer before throttling compared to anything Apple has shipped before. And that brings us to what might be the most overlooked upgrade this year. The battery. Reports suggest the iPhone 18 Pro Max could pack a battery between 5,100 and 5,200 milliamp hours. For comparison, the iPhone 17 Pro Max sits around 4,685 milliamp hours. Pair that larger cell with the dramatically more efficient 2-nanometer chip, and some projections suggest up to 40 hours of mixed use on a single charge. Even if the real number lands somewhere lower, the combination of a bigger battery and a more efficient processor could make this Apple's longest-lasting iPhone ever. If battery anxiety has been your biggest frustration, this is the year that pain point finally gets addressed in a meaningful way. Now let's talk about the camera, because this is the upgrade that almost nobody saw coming. For the first time in iPhone history, the Pro Max is expected to feature a mechanical variable aperture on the main camera. Every iPhone Pro from the 14 Pro through the 17 Pro has used a fixed aperture of f/1.78. That means the lens stays wide open all the time. You get what you get. Variable aperture changes that completely. In low light, the aperture opens wider to pull in more photons before any software processing kicks in. In bright daylight, it closes down to prevent overexposure and keep details sharp. But the real creative breakthrough is depth of field. Instead of relying on software to fake background blur in portrait mode, variable aperture creates real optical blur based on actual physics. That means portrait shots that look closer to what you would get from a dedicated mirrorless camera. This is not some experimental concept. Supply chain analyst Ming-Chi Kuo first flagged this feature in late 2024, and it has since been corroborated by multiple supply chain reports. Production has already started at facilities including LG Innotek in South Korea and Sunny Optical in China. According to Kuo, this new camera module costs Apple 50% more than the current unit. That is a massive investment in a single component, and it tells you how seriously Apple is taking this upgrade. Samsung tried variable aperture years ago with the Galaxy S9 series, but the implementation was limited. Apple's approach reportedly offers a wider, more refined range. If they deliver, this could be the biggest gap between iPhone and Samsung Galaxy S26 Ultra cameras in years. And that brings us to the one question every buyer needs to answer right now. Most people comparing specs are completely missing the design changes happening on the front of the phone. Apple is finally shrinking the dynamic island. After 4 years of keeping the exact same cutout size across the iPhone 14 Pro through the 17 Pro, leak screen protectors and dummy models suggest a roughly 35% reduction. The method is straightforward. Apple is moving the Face ID flood illuminator under the display while keeping only the infrared camera and front lens visible in the cutout. The result is a narrower pill shape that gives you noticeably more usable screen space. Speaking of that front camera, every iPhone 18 model is expected to jump to a 24-megapixel selfie camera, up from 18 megapixels. That is a significant boost for video calls, FaceTime, and content creators who shoot from the front camera daily. The display itself should also improve. Apple reportedly has unprecedented requirements for brightness this generation, and at least one panel supplier has been struggling to meet them. That tells you Apple is pushing hard for a display that dominates in direct sunlight and delivers even better HDR performance for streaming and editing. Here's the part that surprised us the most: the pricing. Despite rising memory costs that have already forced several Android manufacturers to raise prices, analyst Jeff Pu predicts that Apple will use an aggressive pricing strategy for the iPhone 18 Pro and Pro Max. Ming-Chi Kuo separately confirmed that Apple's plan is to keep starting prices flat compared to the iPhone 17 Pro lineup. That means $1,099 for the iPhone 18 Pro and $1,199 for the iPhone 18 Pro Max. Now compare that to the competition. The Samsung Galaxy S26 Ultra launched at $1,299. The Google Pixel 11 Pro XL sits at a similar premium price point. If Apple delivers a 2-nanometer chip, a variable aperture camera, a bigger battery, and a smaller dynamic island, all for $1,199, the value equation tilts heavily in Apple's favor. Even if higher storage models see modest price increases due to expensive NAND flash and DRAM, the base model holding steady at $1,199 would make this a smart long-term investment for anyone upgrading from an iPhone 15 Pro Max or older. Think about it this way. If you keep this phone for 3 years, you're paying roughly $33 per month for the best camera, the best chip, and the best battery life Apple has ever put in a smartphone. For professionals, creators, and power users who depend on their phone daily, that math makes sense. Now, for connectivity. The iPhone 18 Pro Max will debut Apple's C2 modem, replacing Qualcomm entirely. This new in-house modem adds mmWave 5G support, better power efficiency during cellular data usage, and tighter integration with the A20 Pro chip. If you travel frequently or rely on mobile hotspot, this could noticeably improve both speed and battery drain during heavy data usage. Software-wise, iOS 27 brings a completely overhauled Siri, now called Siri AI, powered by Apple Intelligence and Google Gemini integration. The assistant gets full context awareness, can operate within apps, and even has its own dedicated app with conversation history. For the first time, Siri becomes genuinely useful as a productivity tool rather than a party trick. So here is the final verdict. Who should actually buy this, and who should wait? If you're on an iPhone 14 Pro Max or older, this is your upgrade year. No question. The jump in chip performance, camera quality, and battery life across 3 or more generations is enormous. The value is there, and waiting another year means diminishing returns on your trade-in. If you're on an iPhone 15 Pro Max, this is a strong upgrade. The 2nm chip, variable Aperture, camera, and battery improvements represent a meaningful generational leap. If photography or battery life matters to you, the investment is justified. If you're on an iPhone 16 Pro Max, you can wait. The improvements are real, but incremental from a one-generation perspective. Unless the variable aperture camera is a must-have for your workflow, holding your current device another year is the smarter financial move. If you're on an iPhone 17 Pro Max, skip it. You already have a premium flagship experience, and the upgrade value over one generation does not justify the cost. Gamers and creators should seriously consider this upgrade. The A20 Pro's efficiency gains, larger battery, and sustained performance improvements make this the best smartphone for professional workflows and gaming performance Apple has ever built. And if you are weighing the iPhone 18 Pro Max against Samsung's Galaxy S26 Ultra or Google's Pixel 11 Pro XL, the full head-to-head breakdown is coming very soon. That comparison could change your entire buying decision.